Appreciate that. Senator Heinrich.
Thank you, Chairman. And Director Burns, I actually want to reiterate my colleague's statement of thanks to you for working with us on increasing some of the transparency around CIA's activities under 12333. I think this is all about ensuring we just understand how Americans' privacy and civil liberties are protected under those authorities, and I know that's something you care about as well. I want to ask about the current situation in Chernobyl and how concerned we should be about that. I know there's been a lot of reporting about that coming, that Ukraine's grid operator was concerned about the reserve diesel generators potentially running out of fuel once that was disconnected from the larger power grid. How concerned should we be, and what do we know about the situation there that can be discussed in this setting?
I'm happy to start. I mean, from my perspective, my understanding of it is that we should be concerned, but that we haven't yet seen anything that kind of brings us from concern to, it's a complete crisis. And I think if you want further details, what I should do is come back to you in writing on it and give you our best sense of it. But I don't know if others have anything to add.
No, I look forward to that.
Absolutely.
Director, you talked a little bit about Russia's strategic nuclear posture, and I want to pivot from that for just a moment and ask about tactical, or some people have even referred to them as small nuclear weapons, and almost as if they're something we don't need to be overly concerned about, but folks who work with nuclear weapons today know that even tactical nuclear warheads have yields many times larger than what we saw, what we used at the end of World War II. How concerned should we be about Russia's potential use of a tactical nuclear weapon in Ukraine? What would that look like, and what can we do to prevent that from happening, especially given how Putin seems to be in a posture where he needs some sort of a reset, and has proven himself to be very unpredictable.
So I'll just say, I think probably we could have a further conversation about this in the closed session, but as a general matter, as I indicated, we're obviously very concerned, want to make sure that we're monitoring everything that may be going on with respect to Russia's strategic nuclear forces. And but as I indicated, we have not yet seen posture changes that are beyond what we've seen previously during moments of tension, such as in relation to Crimea or in 2016 vis-a-vis Syria and so on. They have made certain posture changes, and they're consistent with what we are seeing now. It's nothing unprecedented in a sense, but I think
the international community's sanctions and economic work with respect to Russia have resulted in quite impressive outcomes. Obviously, Putin is trying to find workarounds for these sanctions to include relying on energy sales on the country's reserves in gold and Chinese currency, as well as cryptocurrency. I've read that while there are mitigating actions the Russian government can take to try to get around the worst of the sanctions, they can't really recreate their financial system. Director Wray, do you agree with that assessment? And also, what avenues do we have to combat Russia's misuse of cryptocurrency to evade the current sanctions regime?
Well, I think Director Haynes may want to weigh in a little bit on this as well, but I think the top line takeaway is that the Russians' ability to circumvent the sanctions with cryptocurrency is probably highly overestimated on the part of maybe them and others. We are, as a community and with our partners overseas, far more effective on that than I think sometimes they appreciate. And there's a lot of expertise in terms of tools and strategies to help block that kind of effort. Ultimately, what they really need to do is get access to some form of fiat currency, which becomes more challenging. I don't know if Director Haynes, you want to...
And you are utilizing those tools?
Absolutely. We have built up significant expertise both at the FBI and with some of our partners. And there have been some very significant seizures and other efforts that I think have exposed the vulnerability of cryptocurrency as a way to get around sanctions.
The only thing I'd add to what Director Ray said is just with respect to the first part of your question, which is the enormous economic impact that's been had as a consequence of the sanctions, and that part of what we've seen is, as I indicated in my opening statement, we expect that President Putin anticipated to some extent what the sanctions would be and how we would approach this, given our past practice in these areas. He built up a reserve fund that was really intended to help him defend his currency in the context of sanctions. But through the actions of our Treasury Department and others in Europe and the West, what they've done is actually make it very hard for him to access that money in order to defend his currency, and we've seen it in free fall. I mean, I believe it's lost about 40% of its value. It is extraordinary to watch the stock markets, the fact that they've had to close down so much of their economic, industry, and also the private sector impact has been extraordinary, and I think really exacerbates the challenge for them in a pretty extraordinary way.
The only thing I would add very briefly, Senator, is that I think among the many profoundly flawed assumptions that President Putin made in launching this invasion was his assumption that he had built a sanctions-proof economy, that by building, as Director Haynes said, a very large war chest of foreign currency reserves and gold reserves, and by not anticipating there'd be sanctions against the Russian central bank, by not anticipating that the German leadership would show such resolve in particular, I think he deeply underestimated the economic consequences, and I think they're just now being felt in Russia, and it's going to intensify.
Senator Heinrich, I think some of your crypto issues are really important. I've got some questions on that in the closed session. Senator Blunt.